is public comments. And I believe there's a few folks that have signed up, and if you'll bring me the list, that'll be great. Just by way of reminder, you've got 3 minutes.
And that's working.
And you've got a little stoplight over here that will tell you when your time's up. And we will stick to that because we've got a lot of folks that have signed up. So please be respectful. When we say your 3 minutes is up, it's up. All right, so first, and I apologize because some of these are a little bit hard to read. We've got, on item number 2, we've got Will Fisher, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, if you'll come over here to the podium. And then Irby Foster is next. If you'll be ready right behind that so we can speed this along, that'd be great. Welcome. Go ahead. You've got 3 minutes. Your time begins now.
Hello.
There you go.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Do I go now?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Will Fisher, and I'm with the group Rethink 35. And just wanted to say, first, to start off the day, thank y'all for trying to make transportation faster for Central Texas. We're the second largest state, and this is the capital area for that state. So it's a hard job to do any type of transportation designs for the state. So appreciate that for y'all. And want to say that it's really hard to think of ways to move people and objects from point A to point B. I work in transportation in the industry, and it's logistics is really, really tough to do, and how to design those roads efficiently and effectively. And I encourage everyone here to think of like alternative ways to move humans around. The oldest way, and probably the best way, is to use the legs that God gave us to go around. And when I lived in Austin in the city limits, now I live outside the city limits, it was hard for me to get around, to use my legs, to buy a jug of milk, to do much of anything, because there's a lot of design for transportation that you need for cars. And cars are great. Cars are really fun, but having more ways to get around where you don't have to be in a car can be a lot more liberating and free. And one of the biggest tourist attractions in the state of Texas is actually the Riverwalk in San Antonio, where people can use their legs to get around and walk the Riverwalk. And so that's one of the oldest ways to get around, is to use our legs. And whenever we kind of lose sight of actually using our legs to get around and just building on what we create, it really can lose sight of what it means to be a human and regain our dignity and strength of actually doing like tasks with our legs, and maybe biking, or maybe taking a bus or taking a train. It's got to remember, how many areas can we all walk using our legs to get around and do stuff? I would challenge y'all to think about that and see how easy it is to actually get some simple tasks or ideas from y'all's, like from all of us, like our houses. Can you get a jug of milk using your legs, or do you have to get in your car, the car that you have to get a loan for, insurance for, got to get petrol from that's been refined in Houston and shipped to the gas station, go get it? And so if you need to use your car for those things, it kind of makes sense why there's
Your time is up. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Y'all have a blessed day.
Oh, that was, oh no, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Irby Foster. I'm concerned about the high number of interstate and state highway streetlights and underpass lights that are out in the CAMPO region. Further, TxDOT has not been installing continuous work zone street lighting in construction zones prior to the start of roadway construction projects, which is actually an AASHTO violation. It is now more likely that we have more freeway streetlights that are out in the CAMPO region than are working. All you need to do is take a drive to prove that. Just letting communities continue freeway lighting to stay in a burned out condition into perpetuity is not a transportation plan. CAMPO must do more to ensure that these repairs are made to freeway lights. We can start by establishing a $25 million fund for member communities to dip into to pay for costly lane closures, repair the wire theft, and repair underpass lighting and upgrade streetlights to LED. TxDOT should be providing work zone street lighting prior to the start of all construction projects in the CAMPO region. Streetlight outages are making our congested freeways unsafe. Between 2020 and 22, Travis County had a 16% increase in fatalities on roadways, 50% of them at night. And it's worse in Williamson County, it was double. CAMPO should do more to fund repairs to freeway street lighting. And I thought I had a minute, so thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, that concludes item 2 for public comment. We have no need for an executive session on item 3. We'll move to item 4, report from the TAC chair. Okay.
I'll provide that update.
All right, go ahead, Chad.
So the first item at our February TAC meeting was election of officers for this year. Our TAC chair, Lori Moyer, selected a nominating committee to identify new TAC chair and vice chair candidates. The nominating committee met and reported out their recommendations to the TAC to elect Gary Hutter as chair and Emily Barone as vice chair, which the TAC did unanimously. And I'd just like to thank our outgoing chair, Lori Moyer from San Marcos. She'd been our TAC chair for 3 years, and we appreciate her leadership during that time. Our other action item at the meeting was a presentation on 2024 performance measure targets, which we'll be presenting today as well. This was also an action item, so following the presentation, the TAC voted unanimously to recommend the policy board adopt the 2024 performance measure report and targets. And we also had 2 information items that will also be covered today. One of them covered by Ryan on the refunding of deferred projects. And finally, Will Liska provided an intro to our upcoming 2050 long-range plan, which again, he'll be presenting today as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Chad. All right, that concludes the report on the TAC meeting. We'll move into item number 5, which is a public hearing and presentation of the 2025 TIP and amendment to the 2045 RTP. And I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing at 2:10.
Do you want the presentation?
Yeah, we'll do the presentation first, and then we'll. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks. Yeah. So before we take public comment, I do want to kind of present this is the public hearing on the draft 2025 to 2028 Transportation Improvement Program, and we also have an amendment from DC or through the state. They're submitted for inclusion in the Transportation Improvement Program, and this provides that funding authorization by the Transportation Policy Board, which is necessary for projects to be obligated funding. I do want to point out that we adopt, the TIP covers a 4-year horizon. We do adopt it every, have that one amendment that we are presenting today for the public hearing. So I do want to just high level talk about what's included in the 2025 to 2028 Transportation Improvement Program. Under the highway individual listings, these are the regionally significant projects that are funded through Federal Highway Administration programs. It does say highway individual listings, but it doesn't include just highways. These are multimodal projects. A lot of them are bike ped projects as well as ITS and things like that. And so the majority of the TIP, $4.6 billion, is listed under the highway individual listings. We also have the transit individual listings, and these are projects and programs that are funded through the Federal Transit Administration. And these include the operational programs of Cap Metro, City of Round Rock, as well as the City of San Marcos. I think it's important to note also that we have group listings, which are not individually listed in the Transportation Improvement Program, but we have close to $1 billion worth of projects that are not considered of an appropriate scale for individual identification, but they include important projects like paving and safety, lighting, and things like that. Those are all included in the group listings. And so our region has close to $1 billion worth of those projects. We also have the project development list. These are projects that are moving through the development process in engineering as well as environmental clearance. So I would consider this really the on deck for funding. And so we have about $2.8 billion worth of projects that are in development that will probably show up in the TIP in the next few years. We also include regionally significant local projects. And then we also have additional sections related to performance measures, as well as our administrative policies and our self-certification and additional resources. I do want to talk specifically, the largest project in the TIP is the I-35 Capital Express project. And there's a lot of phasing that's occurring for this project, so I really want to kind of take a step back and explain how it's listed in the TIP. So we do have the central listing, which is MPO ID 5100189000. This is the umbrella project listing that includes the entire scope, limits, and funding for the project. But as this project is going through the development process and TxDOT is refining that phasing plan, these projects are getting broken up into smaller segments to be let separately. And that's basically 18901 through 10. I do want to point out that these projects, these breakout projects, funding is being shifted between them. But I think the really important thing to take away is that the project scope of the overall project, as well as the funding amounts, have remained the same as previously approved, and no major scope changes or additional funding are being requested at this time. This is going to be something we're going to continue to see and as this project moves forward through the development process and moves forward in letting. So I would expect we'll see this in the fall amendment cycle and the spring amendment cycle on a regular basis as TxDOT continues to refine that implementation plan. But again, nothing overall has changed with that project. And then finally, just from a geographic perspective, I just wanted to have this up here to kind of show geographically where all of these projects are. And then we also have the 2045 RTP amendment, which is on the Pickle Research Campus at UT. And then I'm going to pass it over to Joyce to talk about the open houses and everything we've heard from the public thus far. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So the public comment period for this outreach period opened on March 15th, and it will close tomorrow. In accordance with the public participation plan, the PPP, we held 6 in-person open houses, 1 in each county, and we had those close to the project areas for those projects that are listed in the TIP and also the RTP amendment. In addition to those in-person open houses, the online open house has been available actually a few days before March 15th. We were able to get it posted early, so we did, to give people a few more days to look through that information. All of the information that's available online was also available in person. So the format for in-person, people could leave comments at that in-person open house, or they could take a comment card with them, either mail it back in or email those comments in. We also started a practice during 2020 with people needing to stay home. We were able to mail information to the public if it was just easier for them to participate with hard copies and with postal mail. So we still have the option for people to call a phone number, receive from a few board members that you are receiving public comments through email. So far in our email box, the official comments at campotexas.org, we've received 38 comments. The comment period does close tomorrow, like I said. So I've heard that a number of you have received far more than 38, but as of today, that official number in the way to make those comments through that inbox is at 38. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, and thank you for the presentation. We'll now move to the speakers that have signed up to speak. And there's 12, 13 or so speakers that have signed up to speak during the public comment period.
I had a quick question, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to clarify on those comments, is that information going to be compiled and sent to all of us so we kind of know which items people came and either spoke to you about or provided written comments on?
Yes, ma'am, as is our practice, and with the public participation plan, it outlines that the board will receive the entire email. So it's the way that it is sent to us is how you will receive it and how it will be publicly posted.
Okay, and if we got information sent to our work emails, should we forward those to you or ask those folks to submit their comments directly? How should we handle that?
The official way for people to make comments is the comments at campotexas.org email address for this public comment period.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go through the list of how you signed up. I would encourage you, if you're restating something that somebody else said, feel free to say, what he said or minutes. Behind Bobby will be Adam Greenfield. So if y'all can kind of queue up so you're ready, and then after Adam will be Lauren Mayer. Go ahead, Bobby.
In the tip is the expansion of I-35 through Central Austin. This expansion displaces hundreds of residences and businesses along the corridor. It pollutes air quality without adequate analysis. It contaminates our Colorado River without sufficient water quality treatment. And it reinforces and divides East and West Austin. Or it reinforces the divide, I apologize. But most importantly, I think for this body, it also prevents you from getting the projects that you need for your constituents at $4 billion. As you may be aware, a group of plaintiffs have filed suit against the expansion of this project. I'm not here to talk about that, but I want to read the name of the list of the plaintiffs, because this is a broad coalition that is largely unseen in Austin. Rethink 35, Save Our Springs, Austin Justice Coalition, PODAIR, Downtown Austin Neighborhood Association, Parents Climate Community, East Town Lake Citizens Neighborhood Association, Southeast Austin Neighbors and Residents Organized for Environmental Justice, SONAR, Hancock Neighborhood Association, Mueller Neighborhood Association, Friends of Austin Neighborhoods, Friends of Hyde Park, Sunrise Movement Austin, Environment Texas, Texas Public Information Research Group, and one of my favorite ladies, Celia Israel, who's the only individual named. But we have so many organizations that are also supported of the lawsuit that are not named plaintiffs. For the Title VI complaint that is associated with this, there's over 30 groups that signed on to that, and over 400 individuals that have signed on asking for federal intervention to put a pause to this project and reconsider an alternative that is more environmentally sensitive and actually improve safety and mobility, which is the purpose of this body. So I ask you, with $4 billion, what could you do with your communities if you just put a pause on this project? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Adam Greenfield, and then Lauren Mayer, and then after Lauren, we have Devin Harrington. Go ahead, Adam.
I'm getting information that the feed to the public is really poor. I don't know if there's a way to check on the outgoing
Doyce
sound.
can check on that.
Thanks.
All right.
Good.
Go ahead, Mr. Greenfield.
Good afternoon, committee members, Chair. My name is Adam Greenfield. I'm an Austin resident and a member of Rethink 35. I'm here today to sincerely ask you to vote next month against any version of the tip that includes funding for the I-35 expansion. Like so many thousands of people, I take this project extremely seriously and personally. I live within 3 blocks of I-35. And there are, unfortunately, a minority of elected officials who seem to be saying it's okay for me and my neighbors and their children and their elderly parents to breathe in the toxic emissions from over 130,000 extra cars that would go through Austin every day if this highway were expanded. They're also saying that it's okay for many more people who are likely to be killed on this highway once it's expanded. It is very, very personal. A lot of people have heard about CAMPO for the first time because of this project. They know that the reason why this project is happening is because it's in CAMPO's tip in the first place. They also know that Austin City Council called on CAMPO to pause funding for this project while environmental issues are investigated. And they want to know, what is CAMPO doing about it? Are they actually listening to our elected representatives? That question is still hanging in the balance and will be answered next month. Back in August, some of our Austin representatives refused to vote for a version of the tip that included funding for I-35 expansion. Those courageous individuals, I think, set in motion what may be seen as a historical move regionally against these kind of incredibly damaging and harmful and wasteful projects. Next month, I'm asking you, and I'm talking to each one of you individually, not as a body, but individually, will you stand? Hopefully those Austin reps will vote the same way again. Will you stand with them? You individually stand with them. What is the value of the lives that will be lost if this highway is expanded? What is the value of those lives to you? Where are we going with this project? Expanding I-35, if you don't vote against this, what will happen next? And again, against the tip, but that means you are simply an agent of change. You will be on the right side of history if you do that. I'm confident of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Lauren Mayer, then Devin Harrington. If you'll step up, Devin, and then behind Devin, we've got Natalie Weston.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead. Your time begins now.
Hello, my name is Lauren Maher. I am an Austin resident in District 9 and a student at UT Austin. I want to bring to your attention the frustration my peers and I feel about the future of Austin Transit. When reviewing the transit improvement program for 2025 to 2028, the dominance of funding allocation to highway expansion is undeniable. We're all aware. I understand the intense need for highway expansion and its attractiveness as a solution for our population growth projections. However, it feels that everyone is accepting expansion as a necessary evil and moving on. And this is what causes frustration amongst my peers. Those of us who will inherit Austin want a transportation system we can be proud of, which sounds silly, but it is a genuine sentiment. The other day, I brought my friend Kelly to use the Red Line for the first time ever, and she was giddy to experience it. I have a feeling no one in this room has ever met anyone who expresses that much pride and excitement for I-35. At the very least, I would like to see caps and stitches included in the I-35 funding, which would make expansion a far more exciting option. As an original resident of Dallas, I take pride in the highway cap that became Clyde Warren Park. It feels like a missed opportunity not to bring something of such great value to our own city. I urge the board to reconsider passing TIP until options such as caps and stitches are included. I also request that as board members, you contemplate whether you will take pride in the projects you're about to fund before you approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have, let's see, Devin Harrington, Natalie Weston, and then Will, you'll be after Natalie. Go ahead, your time begins now.
Hi, my name is Devin Harrington, a resident of Georgetown, Texas, and a small business owner. Crime has shown to increase 10 to 15% in communities within a 3-mile radius of a newly built highway. We've seen in Georgetown within a month after TxDOT expanded University Avenue and Highway 29, signs were put up to lock your doors, hide your items, and take your keys. Georgetown never had crime before, but TxDOT changed that. It's commonly said that highway expansion is beneficial to businesses, but it kills local businesses. We see over and over again local businesses getting literally destroyed and replaced with big box stores like Walmart, and we can't keep letting that happen. Local businesses are what keep Texans alive. We're here to support Texans, local Texas farms, and local Texas businesses, not Arkansas. Local businesses like in downtown Georgetown and Round Rock will suffer when they lose out valuable space for their businesses in nearby conveniently located homes to more parking spots rather than more space for people and shoppers. The solution that Texas leaders continue to ignore despite Texas increasingly asking for it is a good rail network that gets people between the suburbs to the city. We've spent billions in taxpayer dollars on a car infrastructure, a solution that simply doesn't work. I'm from Dallas, the place where people who aren't from there cry when they have to experience driving on the highways. Traffic is still terrible no matter how many lanes they add and how many promises they make. That this time it'll fix it. You're getting scammed, but above all, taxpayers are getting scammed. I'm asking CAMPO to cancel funding for this highway expansion and instead give Texans the city-to-suburb rail network that they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Natalie Weston, then Will Fisher, and Robert Bowler. You'll be after Will. Go ahead, Natalie. Your time begins now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I know I don't look like the usual person who comes to a CAMPO meeting. I am Dr. Natalie Weston, and I've been an Austin resident since 2013. I received my bachelor's degree in civil engineering, my master's degree in biomedical engineering, and my doctorate of medicine, all from the University of Texas. I list my credentials not to boost my own ego, but to say that I am someone who oppose expanding I-35 and implore you to not vote for any TIP plan that includes an I-35 expansion. There are numerous reasons why I believe this project shouldn't be pushed forward in its current form, but as a practicing physician, I will use my time today to talk about the disastrous health impacts this project would have. Both the construction process and the increased number of cars traveling through Austin will lead to increased pollution locally. And even if you're not moved by the idea that the environment will be harmed, I really hope you understand that this pollution will lead to worsening health for everyone in this room and everyone you love who lives around this area. Do you or someone you know live with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or diabetes? When you breathe in pollution, it triggers injury and inflammation at a cellular level. And those organs, your heart, your lungs, and everything that's vital to helping your body just exist day to day and carry that burden of that disease has to work even harder because of that injury caused by that pollution. That increased injury leads to increased medication use, increased symptoms, and increased trips to the emergency room, and even hospitalizations where I hope I never have to see any of you or your loved ones there. As a pediatrician, I already see the burdens of pollution regularly in my practice, most frequently in my patients with asthma. My colleagues and I used to joke that on days when the air felt kind of hazy, we'd have to get ready for a busy shift, but unfortunately it turns out that our premonitions were based in truth. Austin researchers have already found a statistically significant association between asthma-related emergency room visits and levels of local air pollution. This will only get worse for everyone, regardless of your health history, if this expansion goes forward. For these reasons and many others, I urge you to please vote against any transportation improvement program that includes funding for the I-35 expansion. I understand I-35 can't last forever, and changes need to be made to ensure that we can all travel safely through the Austin corridor, but it's frustrating when it feels like we're talking about this project like it's an inevitability, but construction hasn't even started. I urge you to please grant the City Council's request to delay funding this project so that the major environmental concerns can be addressed. There's time to explore alternative solutions. Let's use it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next will be Will Fisher, then Robert Bowler, and then Kevin Wern, I believe, is next after that. So, Will, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak again. Appreciate it. It's really kind of y'all to listen to us from the public, so thank y'all. So I'll start off with a vacation story. I was in Berlin last year for a little bit, and they have freeways in their capital, and they have like 3 lanes going one way, 3 the other, and on what we would call frontage roads or feeder roads, they have railways that transport a lot of people on that. And so those railways transport so many extra people that would have been in cars in Texas. And we designed our freeway system from the Germans. Dwight Eisenhower brought that idea back from World War II. So that's sort of an idea if y'all want to think of like alternative ways to make the freeways better. Railways work nice. I looked on my Google Maps, and a thought struck me. So I spoke earlier about using our legs to get around, and everyone in this room, probably, me, everyone here, the news crew, the people who work in the back, we had to drive here. If you look on your maps and you type in bus stop right now, the nearest bus stop is more than a mile away. There's a bias in how we design our infrastructure, and it's for cars. Even this meeting, everyone here had to get in the car. We denied the opportunity for people to be on a bus to get here unless they want to walk more than a mile in the sun. And that's kind of the heart of why this expansion is happening and why it's controversial. There's a bias for only car-centric transportation in Texas, even for this meeting. It doesn't have to be that way. We can change. There's always opportunity to change and do better, even if it's small. So I encourage y'all, next meeting that y'all have for CAMPO, try to have it in an area where it's next to a bus stop. I think that would encourage a lot more diverse thinking and just a different way of mode of transportation, and it might influence the meeting. And so I appreciate y'all so much for letting me talk twice in a row. That's really nice, and just being here and trying to make transport better for Texas. So I encourage y'all to, if y'all can, pause the amendment and just think about how to incorporate more people getting to the meetings and getting their input here than just car-centric ideas. But thank y'all for y'all's time. I really appreciate it. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Next, we have Robert Bowler, and then Kevin Wern, and then Eric Gunther is after that. If y'all will queue up and be ready, that would be great. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Bowler.
Thank you, CAMPO Board, and afternoon. By the way, in addition to where this is located, I just want to note that maybe like whatever 10 people doesn't seem like much, but we're all showing up during the workday at 2 p.m. on a Monday to talk about this. I'm taking time off of work. I know a couple people are, so the numbers maybe don't show it, but it's a difficult time to get out here, and there's still people out here talking about this. My name is Robert Bowler. I'm a homeowner, a 12-year Austinite, and a lifelong Texan. I joined this group of voices to ask that you do not fund this expansion. It commits our region to decades of gridlock transportation, worse water and air quality, and dramatic financial waste, which is kind of what I want to talk about more so. TxDOT is saddling the Austin area with hundreds of millions in upfront costs, up to $880 million, which is probably going to go up because that's how construction goes. And then tens of millions per year in indefinite yearly costs. The last number I read was $44 million per year in maintenance, just to try and undo the aesthetic damage that this expansion will do, although these caps that we're being forced to pay for won't do anything about the air, water pollution, or property values. This, compared to kind of the other side of the spectrum about the value of transportation. City after city is shrinking, rerouting, or replacing highways to yield a bunch of new investments in the region. I'm going to read an excerpt from one case study in Milwaukee, removing a spur that cost them $25 million in state and federal funds, transformed 24 unutilized acres into prime downtown real estate. Ongoing development in the area has helped generate more than $1 billion in new downtown investments. I'll skip some of the details here. I've also linked to this case study in my written comment if you're curious about what Milwaukee's done. But in short, $25 million spent gets you $1 billion in investment in return. Obviously, Milwaukee is a different shape and size than Austin, but you get the point. Highways deflate the value and the quality of life of the communities that they pass through. Austin City Council, like they said, has already voted to delay the expansion until legitimate environmental review can be completed, and frankly, there ought to be a financial review done as well. Please, let's do this right and delay or postpone this expansion project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Kevin Wern, then Eric Gunther, and then Miriam Schoenfeld.
Thank you.
Go ahead, your time begins now.
Sorry about my handwriting. It's rough, and that was me trying. I'm Kevin. I am a resident of District 7 in Austin. I came here to ask that you not fund the I-35 expansion, instead consider funding transportation alternatives to cars. In my time here, I've seen the way that TxDOT treats approaches its infrastructure. I-35 through Austin is one of the deadliest stretches of roads in Texas, and if you spent any amount of time on it, it's clear why. What I'm going to say here is not an indication that anyone operating or building this infrastructure thinks this way, but it's how I feel from what I've seen. When I see billions of dollars go to highways but no shoulder to pull over in an accident, I feel like Texas doesn't care about us. When I hear about increased throughput versus the commute times we know won't improve, I feel like TxDOT only cares about the goods and services that travel on its roads and not the people. When I see Austin put up a few signs in my neighborhood for a pilot shared roads program instead of sidewalks because it would, quote, take 200 years at the current rate to build out sidewalks, I feel like I'm paying my government to make excuses to not help me. When I see pages and pages of design documentation for the expansion and every alternative dismissed in a page or less, I feel like TxDOT knew what it wanted before they ever considered or before they ever started designing. From what I've seen, there's absolutely no indication from the actions of TxDOT that they will build the infrastructure in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. TxDOT was quoted as saying that the work on I-35 will never conclude. This is not the end. Do we want to have this conversation every 10 years? and each time harder to reverse than the last. We're at a critical juncture. Please try to fund sustainable alternatives, and let's put our money into the best plan for us here in the CAMPO area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Eric, and then Miriam, and then Irby Foster after that. Go ahead, Eric.
Hello, my name is Eric Gunther. I am a resident of South Austin District 8. I'm here today to voice my opposition to the proposed funding for the I-35 expansion. In an Oval Office meeting, the Special Assistant to the President presented a report highlighting how federal highway spending intended to improve interstate commerce and national defense was instead being co-opted to build highways through urban areas. States have been building highways through cities attempting to improve regional mobility, reduce rush hour traffic, and despite practically all transportation experts agreeing that rapid transit and mass transit systems were the real solutions to decreasing commute times in growing American cities, the President was frustrated that federal funds were being spent on expensive, inefficient, and poorly planned urban highways. This meeting in the Oval Office was not between Joe Biden and Secretary Pete Buttigieg, but between Dwight Eisenhower and General John Bragdon, late in Eisenhower's administration. Eisenhower ultimately could not stop highways that were already being built through American cities. Metro areas, including our own, shifted space and resources from transit and light rail, streetcars, to automobile infrastructure. I-35 was built directly through the center of Austin, which ended up serving as both a choke point for interstate traffic, as well as an inefficient roadway for regional mobility, funneling local traffic onto a dangerous and congested freeway. Today, we have an opportunity to correct past mistakes, to make meaningful improvements to regional mobility, but instead of addressing the root problem, we're doubling down, committing ourselves to enduring years of construction and billions spent to widen the highway, only to end up with even more traffic and cars. Nearly every Texan has personal experience with TxDOT highway expansions, and every Texan knows that these highway expansions don't ever solve traffic. It's time that we try something different. I urge you to vote no on any funding for the expansion of I-35. Let's learn from history, finally listen to the transportation experts, and invest in an efficient, sustainable transportation infrastructure that truly benefits our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Miriam, and then after Miriam, we've got Irby, and then Hayden, and then Addie. Go ahead, your time begins now.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Miriam Schoenfield, and I'm a resident of Austin. Of course, we should not put 22 lanes of highway and spend billions of dollars through the downtown of the 10th largest city in the country. But that's not the point I want to make today. Instead, I want to ask a question. According to TxDOT, 82% of the traffic on I-35 through Central Austin is local traffic. So here's the question I want to ask. If there were a road in your community, and the vast majority of the people using that road were your constituents, do you think that you or your city councils or your local governments should have a say on what happens to that road? While you ponder that question, let me tell you what our communities and our local governments have been saying about the proposed I-35 expansion. Starting with City Council, a recent resolution called the impacts of the proposed expansion unacceptable and out of step, and explicitly asked this body to postpone funding for this project. Travis County Commissioner's Court sent a letter asking, and I quote, that TxDOT address all our previously submitted concerns, including analyses requested prior to moving forward with the project. That has not yet happened. As Bobby Levinsky mentioned, over 10 organizations, along with former State Representative Celia Israel, sued over this expansion, and over 30 organizations have joined together to file a civil rights complaint. If you look through the list of these organizations, you will see it all. You will see chapters of national groups like the Sierra Club and LULAC. You will see neighborhood associations. You'll see students groups, parents groups, environmental groups, racial justice groups, women's groups. You'll see it all. So what we have here is the city, the county, the neighborhoods, the advocates, elected officials at every level, from the city up to the federal. And you've got thousands of people from the public submitting comments, coming to protests, coming to rallies. So there is simply no room for doubt about what the people of Austin and our elected officials have to say about this project. The extent of opposition to an infrastructure project of this sort in our region is unprecedented and is clear. Let me end with forestalling a response that I hear sometimes. We've already started. This project has been in the works for decades. False. As late as February 2020, Texas Transportation Commissioner Chairman Bruce Bugg made what he described as a commitment that the project in Austin will be no wider and no higher. That is not the project before us today. Let's see a no wider, no higher project. Let's see a project that the people of Austin and our elected representatives can get behind, and then let's get ready to invest billions of dollars. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Irby, and then Hayden, and then Addie.
Madam Chair, thank you, members of the commission. By the way, everybody's opposed to expansion, but don't have any options. 1,000 people a day are moving here. 1,000 people a day bring in their cars and grandma's cars. But anyway, regarding the tip should include major funding for continuous and underpass street lighting improvement, 311 reporting improvements for freeway street lighting outages, increased funding for work zone street lighting, replace all overhead lighted lane indicator arrows on freeways. TxDOT recently shut them all off. Complete direct connection interchanges and fund lighted street name signs on all signal mast arms. While I am concerned about the high number of interstate and freeway street lighting that's out, underpass lights that are out on all the major freeways in the CAMPO region, as I said, there are likely more freeway street lights out in this region than there are working. Drive tonight if you don't believe me. There are thousands, probably tens of thousands of freeway street lights out in this region, including MOPAC, 183, 290, State Highway 130, all the cross streets under these freeways in our cities, State Highway 183 in the city of Austin, Interstate 35 in the city of Austin, particularly through downtown, is completely almost out. Interstate 35 from Georgetown to Austin and from Austin to State Highway 71 and beyond is out. And then State Highway 45 has major street lighting outages. The problem is amplified because member cities, in many of their cases, do not know it's their responsibility to replace and repair freeway street lighting. It's not a TxDOT responsibility, and reporting doesn't work if the citizen doesn't have the address. Work zone lighting. The tip should include funding for work zone street lighting. Generally, when TxDOT does a project, they go in, they turn off the existing street lighting, they do the construction project for 10 years and then turn it back on. The AASHTO standard says lighting is to be maintained throughout the project, and that's something CAMPO could talk about. Lane indicator arrows. Overhead lane indicator arrows are on all freeways in the CAMPO region. The tip must include funding to upgrade and then repair the overhead lane indicator arrows to help ease congestion for greater mobility. CAMPO should, as an organization, insist that TxDOT turn them back on, but the tip could include funding to repair them and upgrade them. Connections, direct connections could be completed to reduce congestion. 290 at 183 is not a complete cloverleaf. 183 at Interstate 35 is not complete. State Highway 71 at 130 is not complete. And State Highway 71 could be made a complete limited access highway. Finally, to increase mobility, the tip should include funds for member communities to install lighted street light and overhead lighted signs on all traffic signal mast arms in their cities to reduce congestion and increase driver mobility. A multi-million-dollar fund to repair street lighting on the freeways, repair the 311 reporting deficiencies, and then increase funding for work zone street lighting in all construction zones in the CAMPO region. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I have my comments added to the record, Madam Chair?
We've got them. They were sent in.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we've got Hayden Walker and then Addie Walker. Go ahead, your time begins now.
Thank you. My name is Hayden Block-Walker. I'm the chair of the board for Reconnect Austin. Reconnect Austin has been working since 2012 to advocate for a better I-35, specifically CAPEX Central. For more than a decade, we've attended every public engagement opportunity, met with TxDOT directly many times, participated in the 2013 Downtown Stakeholder Working Group, the Aesthetics Working Group, and the entire voice process. While CAPEX Central has been significantly improved over the years, there are still issues that remain to be addressed. Despite repeated requests, the community alternatives for this project were never carried through the entire NEPA review. Despite a specific request from Austin City Council to consider the results of the regional emissions reduction study, TxDOT has continued letting this project. Despite evident and increasing climate change, TxDOT has proceeded with a significant widening project, increasing emissions. And no, electric vehicles will not save us from air pollution. They make particulate matter worse. Despite repeated calls for a robust health impact analysis, there's never been one conducted. Despite repeat recommendations from transportation experts to remove the tolls on SH 130, So that traffic is incentivized to use that alternative route, TxDOT continues to ignore the recommendations, despite the fact that $4.5 billion in cost estimate is from 2020, and both inflation and construction costs have skyrocketed since then. The cost estimate has never been updated. Despite the fact that TxDOT knows this region is about to go into air quality non-attainment for both ozone and particulate matter 2.5, they failed to study either criteria pollutant in their 9,000-page federal final environmental impact statement. I-35 does need to be fixed. I agree with that. 25% of traffic fatalities within the 325 square miles of the city of Austin occur in this single corridor. But does it really need to be widened? 70 years of data show that widening highways within urban areas has never solved congestion. Reconnect Austin is here to ask you to remove CapEx Central from the tip until these remaining issues are resolved. You are the only group of elected officials at the local, state, or federal level who actually get a vote on this project. You represent citizens in your capacities here, and those people have spent many, many hours and donated their time and their expertise and their energy to commenting on this project. So I would just end with saying that TxDOT has improved this project over time when asked to do so. Please use your power as the only body who will ever be allowed to vote on this project to remove it from the tip until outstanding issues are resolved. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And last, we have Addie Walker. Okay, your time begins now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Addie Walker. I'm here representing Reconnect Austin and as a private citizen concerned about how the expansion of I-35 will impact my family, my neighbors, and my community. This expansion will increase air pollution in our city and in our region. Already vulnerable environmental justice populations, affordable housing complexes, medical facilities, schools, and child care centers that are surrounded by polluted air will feel those effects worsened because of the expansion of I-35 that TxDOT is building. Polluted air has well-documented health impacts, especially on children, the elderly, those with existing health conditions. I want to thank Dr. Natalie for her comments and second absolutely everything that she said. What we are seeing today with childhood asthma and respiratory illness rates will worsen with this expansion. The EPA recognizes that polluted air, specifically fine particulate matter or PM 2.5, is a danger to public health. If I may quote the EPA directly, on February 7, 2024, EPA strengthened the national ambient air quality standards for particulate matter, PM NACs, to protect millions of Americans from harmful and costly health impacts, such as heart attacks and premature death. Particle or soot pollution is one of the most dangerous forms of air pollution, and an extensive body of science links it to a range of serious and sometimes deadly illnesses. EPA is setting the level of primary health-based annual PM 2.5 standard at 9 micrograms per cubic meter to provide increased public health protection consistent with the available health science, end quote. With the new standard in place, Austin may fall into particulate matter non-attainment as soon as 2025. It is unconscionable that a highway expansion project may move forward while our city is experiencing such high levels of dangerous air pollution. Austin has also struggled with staying in attainment for ozone, another deadly air pollutant that will worsen with this highway expansion. In September of 2023, Air Central Texas, a program of CAPCOG, stated the following, and I quote, "We are close to exceeding the NACs for ozone in Central Texas. This would cost the region $24.4 to $39 billion over the next 30 years. You can help prevent this by driving less, using public transit, and conserving energy," end quote. Given the state of existing air pollution in Central Texas and the very simple fact that with more lanes comes more vehicles, comes more pollution, I request that this board remove the I-35 expansion from the tip. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment on item number 5. As Ryan stated earlier, that will be up for vote next month. Item number 6, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 12th?
So moved.
Motion?
I have some corrections.
And is there, Ashby has got if you'll withdraw that for a second, there's a couple of corrections, and then we'll go back with the motion.
So one on item 8 in the minutes about Pierce Lane, it shows the city of Austin as the sponsor, and that should say Travis County. We have made that correction per the request of Travis County already.
Thank you.
Then also under the item about the set-aside for deferred projects, there is language there, and I'm reading, I can't give you the page number because I don't have it in front of me, but I'm requesting a slight change to the language that's in there. So the language as it reads right now says Councilmember Allison Alter later made an amended motion for approval of the refunding scenario for the total cost and amended transportation development credit amount, and approval of the set-aside scenario for the local expenditure with the submittal of all required information by March 12th, 2024 for the reimbursement of the remaining $3.5 million. The change I'm requesting would be to put a period after the March 12th, 2024 and strike the reimbursement of the remaining $3.5 million because it actually was more than that. So, and then also in the next paragraph, the same language is there, and I'm asking for the same.
Okay, so that's on page, for if you're looking at it, that's on page 6 of the minutes, about the third or fourth paragraph down. So put a period after March 12th, 2024, and then do the same thing at the last paragraph on that page, page 6. All right, so is there a motion to accept the minutes with those amendments? All right, thank you. Is there a second? Second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you. Item number 7, discuss and take appropriate action on federal performance measure target updates.
Thank you. So this item is, we discussed it in February. Just to give a quick recap, when Congress adopted the FAST Act, the legislation mandated that MPOs and DOTs adopt what's known as the Transportation Performance Management System, which is basically an approach towards providing policymakers data, information on how best to invest resources. CAMPO utilizes this process in a variety of ways, including a performance-based project selection criteria, that we monitor the investment of those projects. We adopt regional targets, which is why we're here today. And then we, in our planning products like the plan of the TIP, we discuss what we do to meet those targets. Congress sets several performance measure goal areas, which is listed there on the left. And then the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration, they establish goal areas, goals, performance measures, and it's up to the DOT and the MPO to make a target and then design a plan or a program to achieve that target. These are the targets that we're asking the board to adopt this year. As you can see in the middle, or the second column there, they are all lower, the ones in the brackets from the previous year. This is because this reflects the state's numbers in an effort to reduce fatalities on highways to 0 by 2050. And then the other numbers are staying the same as the previous year. Safety, adopting these targets is not the only way that we incorporate safety into our planning process. We have a number of dashboards on our website. One of them has the performance measures and how we reach those measures. We also have a crash dashboard, which shows crashes going back over the last 10 years, the locations, why they happened, who was involved, and where they happened. We also are kicking off our regional safety action plan for the 6 counties, all of which will be a 50 plan as we update it throughout the year. And with that, staff and the Technical Advisory Committee recommend the Policy Board adopt the 2024 Performance Measure Report, targets, and a company resolution. That's my presentation. Look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Nirav. We've discussed this at multiple meetings, and so I'll accept a motion to accept the recommendation.
So moved.
That was Judge Oakley, and second by Mayor Schrader. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a clarification for the system and freight performance measures. the baseline was at like 84.6%, and then it was going down to 70%. Is that a reduction in reliability that we're calling for there, or am I reading that incorrectly on page 31?
So PM3, is that what you're referring to, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah, that is something that we adopt every other year, so we're not adopting that target this year. We adopted it last year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then I wanted to ask Tucker Ferguson if you could maybe speak for a moment about what TxDOT is doing to reduce the number of fatalities on the roadways. These are the targets, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about the proactive measures.
Upgrades, wider traffic lines, for example, traffic signals, those are incorporated into all of our projects going forward, and we trust that we'll see a reduction in fatalities to hit our goals by 2050.
Thank you. And I know locally, the single most important thing, and I continue to raise this, is enforcement. When people have the threat that they're going to get a ticket, they generally do a better job at obeying the traffic laws. So to the extent that you vote on or have a say in enforcement in your local jurisdiction, that's huge.
That was a pretty surprising stat that we saw earlier this year about that, the speed and fatalities and what it was attributed to as well.
Chair, and I'd like to, if I could add, I talked about the engineering side, you talked about the enforcement side, but there's also a huge educational piece that we put out with our safety campaigns, going to schools, going to civic groups, just messages out there on awareness and some of our higher reasons of crashes and fatalities. We're trying to spread that word as well so people can change their behavior and drive more safely.
Yeah. Thank you,
the state has a statewide safety task force as well that looks at best practices from across the country.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you. I'm comfortable supporting this item today. I would like for us to continue the conversation about adopting a Vision Zero performance framework when it comes to setting our target. I understand that we are moving forward with the state targets, but when it comes to fatalities, I think this is an area where our board can stand to lead, and especially in being more aggressive in the safety approaches that we undertake with the projects within our region, or perhaps considering some more specific targets that are based within our region. These are great ways for us to demonstrate.
Madam Chair, can I ask Ashby a question real quick? Ashby, along those lines of what Councilmember Fuentes said, isn't the reason why we're adopting this and we're looking at the state level right there is to actually provide a framework understanding for what we can do moving forward locally as a region?
Yes, and so actually we have had a conversation about that recently, and one of the things I was sort of restating was a lot of people feel like zero is not extremely realistic, and so the state adopts a declining target that they are hoping to meet. The point I want to make, though, is whether it's zero or road to zero, the outcome has not changed in terms of we're still all working towards getting to zero fatalities. Just having the title change does not change the outcome of the work we're doing.
And I think, if I recall correctly, by utilizing the state data, we can get to data that would otherwise cost millions of dollars that this MPO doesn't have to do that. But to Ashby's point, it might be called something different, but the goal is the same.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just to that point, I think that we could still adopt a Vision Zero as a framework, as a matter of policy, but continue utilizing the state's data and dashboard. I mean, I think that still is an option on the table for us to consider. So I do want to put that out there for my colleagues here on this board, that we can still adopt a Vision Zero framework, utilize the state data as a way to track our progress to ensuring that we have safer roadways.
Thank you. All right. Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 8, discuss and take appropriate action on the set-aside scenario. Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. So this item is bringing back the set-aside scenario that was approved back in February. But before I go through the results of the evaluation process, I do want to point out some kind of a big deal in my mind, honestly, is that this action today will represent the conclusion of the deferral process for Category 7 surface transportation block grant funding. So all the projects that were deferred.
Okay, is a hallelujah appropriate right now?
So, way sooner than we thought it would ever happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Awesome. We've been whittling away, and this represents the final action. So that was a major commitment made back in 2020. And as you can see there, all the major actions we've had since then. I do want to point out that in November 2021, because it kind of relates to the set-aside scenario, that we did some project refunding with some COVID relief funding or through the CARES Act, but we also took that opportunity to do some deferral list management, and so we worked with project sponsors to review the list and see if they had moved forward with their own funding on certain projects, and that's how we got to the set-aside scenario. A little history there, because we worked with the City of Cedar Park and the City of Austin and pulled those projects off because they were moving forward with local funding sources. So I'll go through the results. And so right here we have the original awards for the set-aside projects that were removed from the deferral list. In February 2024, a couple of months ago, we approved $22.6 million for the City of Cedar Park. We're currently working with the City of Cedar Park to review potential candidate projects and looking at the funding and matching scenarios related to that. I do want to point out that the City of Cedar Park did have TDCs attached to the original project that was deferred and moved forward with local funding. And so that's part of the conversation that we're having with the City of Cedar Park, is whether or not we'll apply TDCs to the $22.6 million. If that's what the city wants to move forward with, submit an updated TDC application for consideration for the policy board to consider once we've identified the original project. And so there are a lot of numbers up here, but these are the results of the evaluation, the continued evaluation of the 3 ITS projects. I want to thank the City of Austin staff that provided the information. There was a lot of information related to the ITS projects that are underway. We were able to confirm the expenditures and the local allocation. The 2 columns I'll kind of point out because they relate to the 2 options that we reviewed is the local allocation, which is the funding amount, bond funding that is put local bond funding that is put on the 3 ITS projects currently. So far, they've expended $4.1 million out of that 8.4. And then we also looked at the need to finish these projects as originally scoped. All 3 as they were originally scoped in 2020 or 2018 and awarded and then deferred. So that need is $13.9 million. And so we also looked at we adjusted that number for inflation to fiscal year 2028, which is when the funding first becomes available. And so the 2 options are, option 1 is doing a true set aside where we look at how much the local sponsor has spent and set aside for these projects, and then setting aside that equivalent amount in SDBG for a future project to be identified by the city. And then option 2 is looking at treating these more like a deferred project as opposed to a set aside, and restoring the funding to these projects so that they can be completed as originally funded. So that's option 2, and in discussions with the city, we think that's the appropriate way to move forward, and so we are recommending that the policy board approve option 2. And let's see. And yeah,
so Ryan, just to be clear, when you said discussions with the city, you mean that the city agreed with the option 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so because that was one of the things is like, do they want to re-federalize these ITS projects? Because, you know, to the technology components, things like that, there were a lot of nuances to review whether or not it was appropriate to re-federalize it, considering how far along the projects are currently. They're underway now, and they're going to continue to be underway up until fiscal year 28, where we can get that federal funding restored to the projects. So yeah, so we had a meeting with them, and this is the option we want to move forward with. And just to kind of give y'all an idea of what these projects actually do, it's really installing a lot of different technology throughout the city. There's vehicle detection, there's a traffic monitoring system, as well as EMS and transit signal priority. And there's also some fiber optic components as well. And then finally, I just want to revisit the financial funding forecast that y'all saw back in February. And I've updated the funding usage, and so essentially we have $19.7 million still available in fiscal year 2028, which is available to be applied to this recommendation. But that essentially is all the funding, SDBG funding through fiscal year 2028. With that, staff is recommending approval of the set-aside scenarios detailed in the addendum, which is option 2, and it's part of the project evaluation and recommendation report, as well as resolution 2024-4-8. And with that, I'll take any questions. So, thank you.
Is there a motion?
Councilmember Alter.
Move approval.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Alter,
And I just want to thank Ashby and the CAMPO team for working with the city. I know this was a complicated process, being a set-aside where, you know, we had, or under that bucket where we had done part of the project, but not all of it, which differentiated a little bit from Cedar Park. And I think we landed at a place that will allow us to get the projects done, which are very much needed for the whole system to function. And so I appreciate you working with the city to find a solution that made sense for getting the project done.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any other comment?
I'd like to make a comment just to clarify. I'm supportive, or I was supportive until you got to the part about depleting the STBG fund till 2028. Is that just typical? Like we won't have any more money in that category for years?
Well, I mean, that's because we chose to refund these deferred projects. If we weren't doing that, normally there would be funding cycles and we'd be doing call for projects, et cetera. But because of the commitment that this board made back in 2020 to refund the projects, and then the subsequent discussion we had about the projects that had already moved forward, that's what pushes it out to that point.
Okay.
Have TxDOT weigh in on that? Because I know the policy is that we're not going to have additional funds until 2028, but is it a matter of a state law? Like, can you shed some light on the policy?
I think that's a CAMPO.
It's a CAMPO?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think what's being asked is, are there other categories of funding that could be used between now and 2028? And they're not, well, we have transportation alternative money that's allocated by this board, so the amounts are nowhere near what we get in surface transportation block grant, but there is funding. And then there is funding available in the carbon reduction program category that's allocated by this board. Once again, that amount is much smaller than what we receive in surface transportation block grant funding. Additionally, if a local government or a transportation agency is eligible and wants to apply for federal discretionary dollars, there are categories of federal discretionary dollars out there that could be applied. And then also, depending on
So just to be clear on that one, so TxDOT could apply for federal grant dollars that could then turn into STBG Category 7 funds for this MPO to allocate?
So TxDOT could apply for some of the discretionary funding. So could Austin or Travis County or the other local governments. It does not have to be Category 7, though.
Okay. Well, I think that's important for us, for all the jurisdictions that we represent, that our jurisdictions, including our state agency, can apply for federal dollars in order for us to have access to STBG Category 7 funds before 2028. So I think that's really important to level set with everyone.
But the only thing I would say to that is this, is that particularly for this board, hopes and wishes, yes, agree, that could be a possibility. And we also amend our plans on a regular basis, as has been seen numerous times by this board right there as well. But for planning purposes, you want to actually be able to have a frank conversation and say, hey, listen, okay, this is what it's going to be. And if we get something from that, that's great. But otherwise, it's usually pretty hard to go ahead and plan on such a scenario. Same thing, to be fair, is the refunding of these projects, because we had signed up and we said, okay, listen, Buda, Caldwell, listen, you're not going to get your money back for an elongated period of time, because we're going to go ahead and fund the CAP 35 project, and we know that's important for the entire region. We'll move forward with it.
Right.
But luckily, we happened to run into more funding to be able to allow for that. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're right. Like, hey, that's a possibility, but I also get apprehensive about saying things are possibilities where we don't have any concrete anchors.
It's more just understanding our options, right? right? As a planning board, we have to know what options are out there, what alternatives are out there, and what to pursue.
Chair Long,
Yeah.
I'd like to just comment, going back to the decision this board made in 2020 to defer the $633 million. That $633 was a combination mostly of Category 2, Category 4, and Category 7 dollars. And as we protracted this Category 7 money to repay those projects, we did commit to refunding all of the projects that were deferred, not just with Category 7 money, but with Category 2 and 4 as well. And we kept that commitment. In TxDOT, we've accelerated the Category 2 and 4 money into a number of those projects, but we even applied future years Category 2 and 4 dollars that TxDOT received to Category 7 deferred projects. So if we would have stayed only within the categories that we deferred back in 2020, this Category 7 delay would have gone even further. So we recognized that it was very important to use the Category 2 and 4 dollars that the district and TxDOT has more control over to put them on the Category 7 projects as well. So we feel very good because we did think that it would probably take us the better part of a decade to get these projects refunded. And now we're complete with that process, and we'll continue to plan as a region going forward with the Cat 2 and 4 dollars in addition to the Cat 7 that will become available in 2028.
Yeah. And thank you for pointing that out, Tucker, because you all did step up and pull from other categories. So thank you for pointing that out. All right, let's see.
Did we take the vote?
No, we haven't voted yet. Any other questions? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Item number 9. Hopefully you've, thanks. We have Walker Williamson that has joined us today to do from TCEQ and has got a presentation for us. TCEQ is our local expert state agency on this, and so thank you for joining us today, Mr. Williamson.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
If you could make sure that little button's up.
Didn't realize it was turned off.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Walker Williamson. I am the Assistant Deputy Director for the Air Quality Division at the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I have Stephanie Frederick and Fernando Mercado, both with the TCEQ, the Air Quality Planning section, and the Air Modeling and Data Analysis section, respectively. They're here. They'll talk a little bit about the EPA's revised fine particulate matter standard, also a little bit about a status update for ozone levels in the Austin area, and then just a little bit about the designations process because, you know, the Austin area is meeting all federal standards right now, so they'll talk about what that process would be if that is something that is in the Austin area's future. So I'll turn it over to Stephanie.
Thank you.
Hi, so again, my name is Stephanie and I'm joined with Fernando. We're with TCEQ's Air Quality Division, just here today to share some updates on air quality for the Austin Round Rock area. As Walker mentioned, we will be covering particulate matter as well as ozone, and we're going to look a little bit at the designations process, both with a new standard like we have now for PM 2.5 and with the existing ozone standard, the revised designations process that might occur if a current attainment area looks like it might move into non-attainment area. We'll also look a little bit at the requirements for non-attainment areas under each of those pollutants. And Fernando's going to start us off with particulate matter.
Hello, I'm Fernando, as Stephanie said. So particulate matter, these are little particles that we know that come from automobiles and things that burn mainly fossil fuels. And we cannot see them with our naked eye. We can see them sometimes if there's a lot of humidity in the air and it looks like kind of cloudy, but typically you cannot see it. These things can get into your lungs and they can cause irritation in your lungs, and this is where the problem comes in. Ones that everyone knows are like industry that burn things and petrochemical companies and things like that. But also biogenic created like
natural things like wind-blown dust can produce this. Also wildfires, which has been a problem lately because there's been fires in Canada and California and other places, even in Texas this year in the Panhandle, and those can produce a lot of PM. And things like the ocean, which is natural, it's crashing against the shore, it can produce spray, and there's salt in the water, and this salt gets entrained into the air, and that can cause PM to be, floating around. There's also, well, we already know this, but there's also automobiles that produce this, and there's also agricultural emissions that come from all kinds of things that they put ammonia in the ground, and they stir up the ground when they plow. So all this stuff can get into the air. So there's a lot of sources of where it can come from.
So you're saying there's a lot of sources. What's the biggest one?
Say again?
You just gave us a plethora of sources that this can come from. So you're not necessarily attributing it to one specific source. You're the SME, so what do you usually see?
It depends where you're at. It depends where you're standing. If you're standing near something, or you're in Houston, or you're in Dallas, or you're here in Austin. We're going through that process right now. There's a designation process that we have to follow, and we're slowly going through that. But I mean, you could just think here in Austin, people were just talking about automobiles. That could be a problem.
Okay, so my apologies. What I'm hearing you say is that that's what you're going to learn through the process. You're not aware just yet.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We have ideas, but you have to go through all the science to figure out what's causing all this.
It's perfectly okay to say I don't know.
Okay.
We're fine.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So again, so the 2012 National Ambient Air Quality Standard for PM 2.5, the primary one, this is the one that's human health related, was at 12 micrograms per cubic. Secondary one that really is more for about, things that, not human necessarily, but like things that decay with or affected with this particulate matter, or ozone, or things like that. Like ozone, anything that's rubber gets eroded by ozone, but does that really affect human health? That the rubber goes, gets, no, it doesn't. It's for other things other than human health. And there's a secondary annual standard too, and this is health related at 50 micrograms per cubic meter. Sorry, the secondary was at 35. And so also there's a PM10 NAAQS, or a National Ambient Air Quality Standard, for PM10, which is the bigger particulate matter, which is, you could see this stuff. You see these diesel trucks when they hit the gas, you see a big puff of black smoke. This is what this is. They retained the secondary annual at 50 micrograms, and they retained the 24-hour at 35 micrograms per cubic meter. And this 2024 primary PM standard will become effective in May 6th of 2024 this year. So right now it's not implemented. It'll be later this month, I suppose, or this year. Mm-hmm. So what's happening here in Austin right now with PM 2.5, and we use something called a design value. It's an algorithm that tells you, it takes into account a Runberg area, I suppose that's where it is. And if you notice, the Austin Weberville and Austin North I-35 are above the standard of 9. Weberville is at 9.4 and Austin I-35 is 9.7.
How does that I-35 location, that was a major construction zone for a good period of time, which it sounds like that's one of the contributors.
So typically it's called a roadside monitor, is what we call them, and EPA does too. Typically they tend to measure a little bit higher because they're so near the source, like automobiles. But I don't know about the construction. People do live in that area, so maybe it should be taken into account. But did I answer your question, sort of?
So so we've looked at the monitors as well, and when they went off was the same time that the direct connectors were being built for I-35, and this is yards away from where the monitor is. Also, there was an apartment complex built right behind where the monitor is.
Right, and we're going to look into that. I mean, it takes time. And this is all considered. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I'm not going to promise you anything, but these things have to be considered. And, you know, what's the cause? I mean, it could be that that was the cause, but it could be other things. You know, we see things coming all the way from Africa and Mexico. We have dust, and we have a lot of wildfires kind of like happening now, and that also affects all the monitors. And if they're all going up, well, maybe that's part of the problem. But at least for right now, this is what we have and what we're, you know, worried about. So here's a graph, and I believe this is the correct one. The Weberville also is above the standard, but it didn't have that high of a trend. Now, when you look at these, you say, well, why did both go up? You know, it could be, like I'm saying, wildfires. It could be dust from the Yucatan. It could be, you know, African dust that comes over every year. If you're not aware of this, this happens. These clouds of dust come over, and then, you know, it affects everything. So these are the point sources that we know of in Austin, and this is how do you say it? What industry tells us what they're emitting, okay? And as you can see, this is much bigger than Austin, and you can see that the bigger dots are the ones that have potentially the more PM 2.5. In fact, that's what they're saying they're putting. And you could see the ones in the Austin area are a little bit smaller. Okay, so you can see what's bigger and what's not. I'm not going to go into names of who's doing what, but it's obvious who's bigger. Here's the focused in part of Austin, and we have several places. The biggest one that I could see right there is it's a landfill at 29 tons per year. There are other places. I mean, but the closer you are to a monitor, the more likely you're going to affect that monitor. So, but these are not that high compared to what we saw in the previous plot. Okay. So now, Stephanie.
So this new PM 2.5 standard kicks off an official designations process that occurs anytime the EPA sets a new or revised NAAQS. So one of the first steps in that is that the state will submit our area designations to EPA. An area can either be attainment, meaning it meets the standard, non-attainment, meaning it doesn't, or unclassifiable, maybe if we don't have enough information to make that determination. And then ultimately EPA makes the final designations. If they disagree with anything that the state said in our area designations, they will submit what's called a 120-day notice to us before designations are finalized, just to give us a heads up on that. This flow chart shows the relationship between EPA and state action in the designation and SIP revision cycle. So I'm sure you're all familiar, but SIP is the State Implementation Plan, which is an enforceable plan developed at the state level that explains how will the state comply with the NAAQS. And the SIP periodically gets revised to meet various Clean Air Act requirements. So we know that the designations part of this cycle begins when the EPA releases a new standard. The state will look at our data and submit our designations, which the EPA then reviews and makes their own designations for areas, whether or not they're attainment. And during this same time, you can see on the left the infrastructure and transport SIP revisions. The state will be preparing and submitting those at the same time, and those are due 3 years after a new NAAQS is released, and those are not tied to the timing or outcome of the designations process. Any areas that are designated as non-attainment will have their own additional set of SIP requirements that are intended to bring those areas back into attainment. Attainment areas will default out at that moderate level, but they might be bumped up to serious if they fail to attain. And then the higher serious classification comes with more stringent requirements. However, if the area does attain the standard by its deadline, the state can submit a redesignation request to the EPA. So looking at that basic framework, this is a timeline of when we might expect to see all of those different steps occur with the new PM 2.5 standard. So EPA or 2027 or thereabouts. And areas would be required to attain the standard by the end of 2032. PM non-attainment areas, which would start out as moderate, would be subject to non-attainment new source review permitting requirements, as well as transportation and general conformity requirements. Conformity just refers to a federal Clean Air Act requirement that any federal actions or federally funded actions don't cause or exacerbate any violations of the NAAQS or delay attainment for an area. There are also required SIP revision components, including an emissions inventory, an attainment demonstration, a reasonable further progress demonstration, and contingency measures. If you think back to that flow chart, if the non-attainment area fails to attain the standard by its attainment date, the area would be reclassified to serious, which comes with those more stringent requirements, and relief from these requirements only occurs upon formal redesignation to attainment by EPA. So I'm going to hand it back to Fernando to talk about ozone.
And Fernando, if you could speed it up just a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the ozone acts is right now at 0.07 parts per million. That's the units. And both Austin Round Rock area, or the Austin Round Rock area, is in an attainment of it at the moment, but we'll get to this. So these are preliminary, please, okay? They're preliminary. North Hills Drive is at 71 parts per billion when you're calculating the design value, and this is what you compare to the standard of 70. And Autobahn is at 67. So this can change because if there was an effect from a wildfire or something, then we can submit and say, hey, this day was, it was affected by wildfire. Can we remove that date? And it could change the design value. So the trend over time, and I have to say I'm sorry, but the Austin Northwest and the Autobahn are reversed, I believe, in this one. And it's really the north than the blue one. So we see a little spike at the very end of this year in ozone. So this is your stuff. Go ahead.
So even though we see that Austin Round Rock now has a design value that might exceed the 2015 ozone standard, that does not automatically make the area non-attainment. Changing or revising an initial designation is based on monitoring data, but it still requires a formal process similar to that initial designations process that we looked at for the new PM standard. So ozone, any violation of the ozone standard, it would have to go through a formal process as well with a whole timeline of various required steps. The EPA does have the ultimate discretion to revise current designations. If they do decide to do that, they will first notify the state, and the state has 120 days to respond to that. And if the EPA decides to move forward with redesignations, they'll notify the governor then 60 days before finalizing that. Non-attainment requirements for ozone are similar but a little bit different than those for PM. It again depends on the level of non-attainment. So here for ozone, we're looking at the lowest level of non-attainment, which is marginal. It also comes with permitting requirements for new source review and also emissions offsets. There's also an emissions inventory that's required and emissions statement. And then it also comes with similar conformity requirements for transportation and general conformity. And with that, I think we can take any more questions, or you can always email us any questions you have.
Thank you all very much, and we'll make sure that those slides, Nirav, if you'll make sure that those get distributed to the policy board, if they haven't already. Yes. And we're going to take just a couple questions, because I don't want to, we're losing folks, so. Commissioner.
Okay, well, maybe we could schedule this, but it seems to me that whether we, sneak by the new designation or not, that if these are set to help protect our health. And when you think about the construction around just, my region, I mean, from the airport to 290 to I-35, 183, 360, 1431, we're sending a lot of stuff up into the air. And I just wonder what the regional conversation, what could the strategy be around preventing pollutants? And, this is way out of my league, but it just sounds like, I don't know if it's between Tucker and TCEQ, that we should have expectations around safety that we can hold ourselves accountable to.
So I'm not sure if that's a question we can answer today.
Well, I think so one question is whether we fall out of compliance or not. What does it do to our big projects? What does it do to the I-35 project? Do you have to do other things? Should you do other things?
Okay,
so that's one question.
Okay, well, and then hold on that. We'll let Walker chime in here for a second. But then I think your other piece is a much bigger discussion that we probably aren't going to do today.
Okay, but I want to do it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Walker.
So yeah, real quick on the question about, what happens in transportation planning. That's where Stephanie talked about transportation conformity. So that's something where any sort of transportation plan that you're doing in the future, if the area is non-attainment, and we're developing a state implementation plan for that area, we would set emissions levels in that SIP, and you would have to show that the emissions that result from your transportation plan don't exceed that emission level and don't have any impacts on attainment or any other requirements of the Federal Clean Air Act.
And does it matter if projects are let before or after the designation?
So after the designation, you have 1 year to make a conformity demonstration. So if you've made it before that, and if it's continuing, that I'm not quite sure about. I can take that question back to our conformity expert.
Okay. Thank you.
Let us know.
We'll do one more down here. Mayor.
Two really quick, thank you. The first one is very similar. Are there any impacts other than having to have environmental considerations in our traffic plans? Is there anything that impacts anything else that we do as governments?
Sorry, I'm trying to think. I can't think of anything readily off the top of my head. I mean, I think that is the major impact. Of course, you're going to have impacts to potential emission sources that are within your area. So, anywhere that is emitting pollutants for whichever particular standard we're talking about here, they may have to revise their permit with TCEQ. So those are the kinds of impacts we would typically see.
Okay, so it'd be impacting things that have to get a permit with TCEQ, basically.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then my second one really fast is in the beginning of the presentation, you showed us the really cute picture that showed all the different things that can happen. We talked about how dust can come from other countries and get here. So if we know that some of the areas, obviously it's our traffic, but if some of the areas are reaching or contributing to that non-attainment because of something from elsewhere, is there anything that we are supposed to do to help offset that? Or are we just stuck with?
Right. So part of the considerations that the EPA makes when it's making those designations is contributions from, so you have the county where the monitors are, that's Travis County in this case, and then the EPA will then consider the emissions coming from outside of that area and determining whether they are at such a degree that they are impacting the non-attainment level at that monitor. So to some degree, yes, that is part of the consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless it's materially different, we need to move on because we're going to lose some folks.
Just a slight refination on that last question in terms of last year being record droughts throughout South and Central Texas with prevailing winds coming from the south. will the EPA look at whether, because obviously, dry soil is a dusty soil, right? So you're going to have much worse particulate matter. You're also going to have less, your plants are dormant, so it's going to be absorbing ozone and more slowly. Is that something they'll look at, that last year's weather in our region and that south of us was an outlier?
Right, so Fernando mentioned exceptional events, and that is something that can be considered in those designations. I don't know that temperature in and of itself is something that can be considered, but if there was example, there's wildfires because, everything's dry, or there's dust events because, the soil's stirred up, it's very dry and it's blowing in dust. Those are potentially things that we could look at. We're not to the point of having actually looked at those at this point, but that is something that we will be
But it has to
looking
be
at.
acute stuff, so like an ongoing natural disaster like we had last summer wouldn't count.
I mean, whether it's ongoing or whether it's just something that has happened within, 1 year, it has to be deemed by EPA as being exceptional.
Okay. Thank you, and I know there's other questions, but we're going to go ahead and wrap up so we can really...
1 minute? I could be so fast.
Off in 60 seconds.
I totally understand, and I know that you'll follow through on that. Does a non-attainment designation mean that we would be more or less competitive for any federal money that might come down on transportation projects?
I don't know. I do know that, projects that are federally funded, that is something that conformity does apply to. So you would be restricted in terms of what you could do up to meeting that conformity level for emissions. But in terms of actual project, whether you are docked for that, I don't know the answer to that.
So a non-attainment designation would make us eligible to receive congestion mitigation air quality funds, or Category 5, as we call them. That money comes as a block to the state, to TxDOT. Then it is negotiated in basically an agreement between the non-attainment areas, and the largest variable is population in the formula, and then severity of non-attainment is the other one. So if you use San Antonio as an example, if we were designated non-attainment, we would stand to get very little compared to how much we would have to spend to be in attainment, because of one, population, and two, severity. Houston's at 7.5 million, Dallas is at 8.2.
Yeah, it's not a windfall, basically.
No, it's not good news for us if we go under.
Walker, thank y'all very much for coming. We really appreciate y'all being available to answer those questions, and we will make sure that their contact information is there if we have any other questions. So thank y'all very much. We appreciate it. And I think, don't take this personally, Will or Nirav, we're going to jump past 10 and 11 and go on to Ashby's Executive Director report. I think.
So Tim, if you can go real quick,
because we're going to lose Tim, and he's going to do an update on the lawsuits, et cetera.
Sure. This relates to the GHG rule and the fact that both federal courts there was a state challenge to the new GHG rule, greenhouse gas rule, brought by Texas and by Kentucky and 20 other states up in Kentucky. In both cases, the federal courts placed an injunction on enforcement of the new greenhouse rule targets. Those orders remain in place, and at this point, the federal government has asked both courts, the Fifth Circuit and whichever circuit covers Kentucky, I don't know off the top of my head, they've asked them for more time to consider whether they want to go forward with an appeal of the federal district judge decisions. I think given the timing of all of this, I think they're probably considering whether they want to come back to the well after the election or not, or various considerations like that. So I don't have any update right now on whether they're going to actually prosecute an appeal of the district judge decisions. So
that's the Sixth Circuit for Kentucky.
But he didn't know it off the top of his head. He did have to Google it, I promise.
I saw that.
Thank you, Tim.
Sure.
Ashby, anything else on your report?
Yes, Madam Chair. So, in according to the board's rules, anytime I process an administrative amendment to the plan or the TIP, I must report that at the next meeting. So I did process an amendment to the current 2045 long-range plan for the region. This is for a roadway project in Buda in Hayes County, and it was to change the project from saying 4 lanes to up to 6 lanes. Will, was that what it changed to? 4 to 6. To saying up to 4 to 6 lanes, and that was the difference in the change. And this project is located east of I-35 and south of State Highway 45.
So thank you, Ashby. I will, under the chair report, just real quickly let you all know that we didn't have a March meeting, but the executive committee met with the executive committee of AMPO. I believe it's kind of towards end of March, and I think it was a really productive meeting. And one of the key takeaways from that is we've asked Ashby and his colleague Sid to really look at, and it's timely that we just had this discussion, some of the issues related to the conformity, because some of those standards and rules were adopted, 30 years ago? Plus, and one of the things that the folks from San Antonio and that region really talked about too, and is the big issue is transport and what comes in from the region, from other places, and how do we deal with that. So that's something that at the staff level are going to be talking about, and then that will be something that we look at our next joint executive committee meetings. But I think it was a very productive meeting that we had, and we look forward to the next one. Then the TAC will meet April 22nd, and the next meeting of this board will be May 13th at 2 o'clock. So thank you all for attending and for your patience for a slightly longer agenda. We stand adjourned at 3:50.